right, so we have an interesting little case study that I had the other day. Put this one together for you guys. We have in a 2021 Jeep Wrangler that has an auxiliary coolant pump fault. Now, there wasn't any crazy history on this one. This was just customers driving the car, check engine light came on. They brought it to their repair shop. The repair shop scanned it. They let me know they had some auxiliary coolant pump faults on it and then called me in to diagnose the rest. So found a couple things on this one. The result was definitely not what I expected to find on this, being a newer 2021. I wasn't expecting the fault that it was, but let's dive right into this one. So 2021 Jeep Wrangler, this is the 2-liter turbo motor. Scanned it. I'm using factory Y-Tech on this one. This is a little picture of the micropod, would be called. That would go into the OBD, and then you use a laptop, or you could really use anything like an iPad, a phone. I like to use my laptop. So we scanned this car and we had a couple codes in here. You could see we have some stored codes and a couple other modules like the TCM, BCM, radio frequency hub, ABS. Those we're ignoring. That's not the primary concern that the client had today on this car. We're concerned with these PCM fault codes that are active, causing the check engine light. Those are going to be, we have lost communication with charge air cooler coolant pump A as an active code, and then we have charge air cooler coolant pump A control circuit low as an active code, and then we have 2 stored codes here in the PCM. One is also for the charge air cooler coolant pump performance code, and then we have an implausible data from brake system as a stored code, which is probably going to relate to these other codes. So not the issue they were going at today for these other ones, but we're just looking at this coolant pump fault. So right away, this loss of communication and this control circuit low send me in a direction. The performance would kind of, if it was just a performance code, it would kind of send me in like a different direction. But this loss of communication brings me right back to wanting to check powers and grounds, get to the module and see why it's not communicating with it. So this was the location of the coolant pump. It's on the passenger side. You access it through underneath the car. I originally went on top to see if I could get it from the top, but it's kind of like on the bottom. You can't get to the connector or anything like that from the top. So this is going to be more of underneath. Now I was able to get this one just with a creeper going under it. The vehicle is high enough where I was able to get under it, and I did not need to get it on a lift. So pull the diagram up just to see what we had working with. You could see down here we have the auxiliary coolant pump. It's a 3-wire connector. We have our fuse power coming in at pin number 3. We have a LIN bus signal, which will be how it communicates on pin number 2. And then we just have like a chassis ground on pin number 1. So easiest thing to get to first, this is the PDC, the power distribution center under the hood on the right side. Fuse F7 is a 15 amp. So just going to check that fuse real quick. We had 12 volts. Now a note, I'll always pull the fuse out and just make sure both legs are there on the fuse. I've never personally ran into it, but I have heard it from someone that they've ran into just a weird situation where someone cut one of the legs off. So if you were testing the fuse normally at the 2 terminals at the top, you'd show good voltage across it, indicating a fuse that's not blown. But with the one leg cut off of it, it's not distributing power to the circuit here. So you'd have power coming in, power coming out, but with the fuse leg cut off, it won't be sending power to the component. So just a note, after hearing that, I've never ran into it, but I always just pull the fuse out and make sure that it's got both legs, just because I could see that throwing you on a wild chase of testing a bunch of stuff and it being something that someone created. But regardless, tested the fuse here at the PDC. We had our battery voltage. There was no issues there. I always like to try and get my ground lead on a battery negative or a really known good ground just to make sure I don't have any issues. If I don't have a good ground, it could give me false readings and kind of send me down a rabbit hole and just waste a lot of time. So it's always good to have like a known good ground. So I try and just go to the battery if I can. In this case, the battery was right next to this PDC, so it's easy just to jump a lead off the negative terminal. I am in the works. I'm trying to create a kind of like a box. It's going to be like just like a square box with a bunch of like banana connectors on it, and like one heavy cable that'll go to like the battery negative. This way I'll kind of just have a box that I could just probe my multimeter into to grab grounds if I needed to, instead of having to like go to a battery or a ground point. So working on that at some point whenever I get some free time. But this fuse checked out okay here. So my next step was get to the coolant pump itself, get to the connector. Let's see what we got going on there. So getting to this coolant pump, now I'm testing this with it unplugged. You can test this a couple different ways, but I just had this connector unplugged and using like a terminal tool. I like to use the AES Wave terminal kit. This way I could test retention and just make sure everything is good, and I'm not going to spread the terminal. I won't always use it depending, but you know, I try and use it where I can for the most part, but sometimes I'll just use one of those really small needle probes. It depends on like the style of the connector and just how I'm feeling for the day. But so this was unplugged and we had 7 volts here. So I kind of knew right away this was going to be my issue. We had some resistance or something going on this power feed, and that's most likely going to be the case. But while I was here, I kind of wanted to just verify the other pins as well. So moving over to the ground, just using a headlight bulb here. Same thing. We have one lead on battery positive now, and then the other lead is going to pin number 1, which is chassis ground. We light the bulb so we know we have a good ground. It's capable of carrying current. There's going to be no issues there. You could do like a voltage drop test on this or a couple other things. I kind of just find this personally the easiest way. I have just like a headlight bulb, an 1157 bulb with some stackable banana jacks on it, so it's easy to just put it in the meter or just like put leads out of my bulb and just do a quick little test here. You know, I'll use various amperage bulbs depending on, you know, the circuit that I'm testing. So this is what I use for this one. This ground tested good, so I know I have no issues here. Also, while I was here, I just pulled out my little U-scope quick, wanted to do a little test here just to make sure I had good communication. Now this is also with this connector unplugged, just as a note, moved us back to a negative lead at the battery and our positive lead right here into the connector pin number 2, again utilizing that terminal kit from AES Wave. Now we have a good waveform here. We have our 12 volts, we're cycling down to ground, we have nice little data packets here, so this all looked good. This is just my like BNC connector. It's just like a single wire that branches into like a splitter, and then it's the positive and negative that come off of that. So that tested good. Just wanted to make sure. Note for these, if you were to test this plugged in, there's like one of two things that could happen if there was an issue on this wire. Now the powertrain control module is going to be the master, and this auxiliary coolant pump is going to be the slave on this LIN circuit. So with this powertrain control module, say this was powered up and you had it unplugged, we're going to see this here, because the master module, from my experience in testing, I don't know if this is always, but I've yet to see it not act like this. This master module will always give like a communication waveform with data packets, whereas if I had this powered up and I depin this and just put my scope here, I would see just a flat line of 12 volts. So just a good note that the master usually gives this type of waveform with the data packets showing communication, and a slave will often just show 12 volts. So if you were to check this plugged in and only saw 12 volts, that would indicate you have some type of open going to this powertrain control module, because this module itself will generate just the 12 volts. So just a note, you can get a little like tripped up testing those. So this showed good. We had good communication at this module here. We had good ground here. What we're missing right now is power, because we're only showing 7 volts there. So my main point of interest is going to be, let's get to this inline connector here and let's see what we have both sides of this connector with the multimeter. So looked my multimeter up and we had the same thing, 7 volts. Now it's important to check both sides of this connector, because I have ran into terminal tension issues on connectors like this, where you'll have solid 12 volts on one side but not on the other. So you'd want to verify that you're checking both sides just to make sure you don't have any issues, because you could have a spread terminal with some resistance. I have ran into that in the past on some headlight circuits. So checked both sides of this connector. We were good, so there was no issues. Looks like the terminal tension and everything was good there, since we were showing the same voltage across it. My next step is going to be getting to this PDC, and we're going for connector C2 terminal A5, and I want to see what I have coming out of here. Now this is a little bit tricky, because to get to this connector here, you basically have to remove this PDC, which requires taking the main battery out and the auxiliary, because there's a lot of like heavy gauge wires that are bolted onto the side of this behind some really big fuses, like this one right here. So you'll have these N fuses, which are like 100 amp and stuff. So these have to be all disconnected. You don't want to just like take them off, because one of these does go back to the main battery, which is right here, N2 and N1. So two of these wires do go back to the batteries directly. So if you take those off and they grounded something, won't really be the best scenario. So a little bit careful taking this out. It does make testing a little bit harder, because now with all the batteries out of the car, I can't see what my voltage is here. So a little tricky, but I ended up getting access to this. We removed this and we got to this connector right here, C2 terminal A5. So this gray one is connector C2, and this would be terminal, this is row A. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's kind of hard to see, but this looked like it was spread right away. So I used my AES terminal kit here just to get retention, and there was zero retention. It didn't hold it at all. It was very, very loose in there. So after seeing that, I kind of originally knew that was going to be the issue. And this is where it's located here. This would be that PDC. This would be the main battery here. So while I had this out, I pretty much knew this was going to be my issue, that I had this spread terminal. So I did depin it, tighten the terminal up, got tension back on it. I'm not sure why we had a loose terminal tension, especially on a 2021 Jeep Wrangler. It's a newer car. I can't imagine that anybody has had this apart or been in here. So I was a little confused as to why it was spread. So we ended up tightening this up. It seemed like it was going to be good. If any issues return, we are going to have to get a new terminal for this one, but it did tighten up. It didn't seem like anything was broken, maybe just from heat on the circuit or something like that. I do know on some of these coolant pumps, like, it is common that if those pumps start leaking like through the connector, that coolant can like start wicking up through the wires and causing resistance and all types of issues. This one, however, was quite dry, so there was no issues. There was no water or coolant at all. But so basically with this unplugged, what I did, we had this connector out right here. I pretty much just hooked up like a jump box, and I went from this connector to this connector and pretty much just like wired in like my headlight bulb, just to load test this wire through this connector to the auxiliary coolant pump. So imagine a probe coming out here and a probe coming out here, and then we kind of just ran it through a jump box. It'd be like 1 lead of the meter, be like 1 lead of a bulb, jump box here, positive, negative, and then we go back to here, and it lit the bulb. So I knew there was no issues along this wire. I was able to test it. So this one pretty much was just a spread terminal. We fixed the terminal and everything was good after that one. But little interesting case study, just showing you my thought process, workflow on diagnosing this one. Still very odd that this one had a spread terminal, but you know, this is a good note. If anyone else runs into one of these codes or is dealing with a similar issue, definitely be a good note to check terminal tension throughout the entire circuit. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys like this case study. If you have any questions or anything like that, tools I used, let me know down in the comments what you think. And if you want to see more type of content like this, let me know. Give me a like, subscribe. You know, if you like seeing stuff like this as well too, subscribe to the channel. I try and post case studies just as I get interesting ones in and I have the time to throw them together. If you're interested in being part of type of this stuff as well, I do have a Discord. Link is in my YouTube description. It's also on the Instagram as well too. So if you guys are interested in kind of being a little bit behind the scenes, maybe seeing some of the tools that I use, some case studies, kind of what I'm getting into on the day-to-day, join into the Discord. You guys could get a little bit of that. But with that, I'm going to wrap this one up. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you guys on the next one.